COBOL. Listen up. COBOL ran the world's banks. Literally. Every credit card swipe in the 80s? COBOL. Pension calculations? COBOL. Insurance claims? You guessed it. COBOL programs had 4 divisions. Data division defined file structures and records down to individual field sizes. Picture clauses specified exact formats. PIC9, 5. V99 meant 5 digits with 2 decimals. Verb-based syntax used move, compute, if then else. Each line started in specific columns. Punch card legacy right there. The golden years, 1960s through 1990s. Dominated mainframes. Government agencies, financial institutions, Fortune 500 companies. Why it died. Universities dropped it in the 90s. Cloud computing killed it. You can't scale COBOL microservices. Modern DevOps doesn't work with 60-year-old mainframe architecture. Drop a comment if you've ever touched COBOL code. PASCAL. PASCAL was the teaching language. Every CS student in the 80s learned it first. Strong static typing caught errors at compile time. Stack-based parameter passing kept memory clean. Single-pass compiler ran on 64 kilobytes RAM machines. P-code intermediate representation made it portable. Record types created complex structures. Arrays had defined bounds. Compiler checked them. The glory days? 1980s universities worldwide. Powered Turbo Pascal. Apple's early Mac system was written in Pascal. The death spiral. C became professional standard. Java emerged for teaching. Borland discontinued Turbo Pascal. Open source movement had GCC for C. Pascal had nothing comparable. FORTRAN. The original programming language. The first high-level language ever. Column-based format from punch cards. Array indexing started at 1. Multidimensional arrays stored in column major order. DO loops were the workhorse. Implicit typing. IN variables were integers. Common blocks shared data between subroutines. The compiler optimized aggressively. Vector operations compiled to efficient machine code. Peak power? 1960s through 1980s. Dominated research labs, university science departments, aerospace companies. The decline? C++ arrived with OOP. MATLAB gave scientists easier prototyping. Python with NumPy made life simpler. Legacy code was too valuable to rewrite, but new projects moved on. Subscribe if you want more programming history deep dives. ADA, the Pentagon's baby. Department of Defense mandated ADA for all military software. The technical design? Based on Pascal, but massively extended. Packages provided modularization. Strong typing was extreme. You couldn't mix integer types. Runtime checks caught array bounds violations. Tasking was built in. Rendezvous models synchronized tasks. Exception handling was comprehensive. Every compiler had to pass rigorous validation suites. The military years, 1980s and 1990s. Aviation systems, missile guidance, submarine control, all ADA. The collapse, Cold War ended. ADA mandate lifted in 1997. Companies jumped ship. Training cost a fortune. C and C++ were cheaper with better ecosystems. PERL, the Swiss Army chainsaw of scripting languages. Interpreted with powerful runtime. Regular expressions were first class. M/pattern/form matching. S/find/replace/ for substitution. Sigils identified types, $for scalars, at 4 arrays, %4 hashes. Everything was loosely typed. 42 plus 8 gave you 50. CPN modules extended everything. DBI for databases, LWP for web requests. The golden era, late 90s through mid-2000s. Yahoo's backend was PERL. Amazon used it extensively. The fall, Python arrived with cleaner syntax. Ruby on Rails made web development elegant. Perl 6 development took forever. Reading other people's Perl? Nightmare. Write-only language, they called it. Hit that like button if you remember CGI bin directories. Visual Basic 6. Drag and drop your way to Windows apps. Revolutionary. Event-driven programming. Click a button, code runs. COM objects everywhere. ActiveX controls dropped onto forms. P-code by default for development speed. Forms were visual classes. Variants were universal type. DAO and ADO for databases. Error handling used on Error Resume Next. Errors didn't crash, they just happened. The glory days, late 90s and early 2000s. Millions of VB6 developers. Access databases with VB6 frontends powered businesses. The death sentence. .NET Framework arrived in 2002. Not backward compatible. Support ended in 2008. Migration to .NET required complete rewrites. Companies chose C# instead. SMALLTALK. The language that invented object-oriented programming. Pure OOP. Everything was an object. Image-based development. No source files. Message passing was the only interaction. 3+4 was message passing. Classes were objects. Metaclasses were objects. Live coding, modify methods while programs run. Late binding everywhere. MVC pattern was invented here. Browsers organized code visually. The innovation years, 1980s research labs. Influenced Java, C++, Ruby, Python. Why it failed, expensive IDEs. Proprietary vendors controlled everything. Java gave you OOP without the price tag. Nobody wanted licensing fees when free alternatives existed. Clipper. DBase on steroids. Database applications for DOS businesses. XBase file format stored data. Records were fixed length. Index files provided fast lookups. Compiler turned DBase code into executables. Record-oriented programming. Use open tables. Code blocks were anonymous functions. Memory variables stored temporary data. Set commands configured everything. The boom times, mid-80s through early 90s. Small to medium businesses ran entirely on Clipper apps. The end, Windows 95 killed DOS. Visual Basic, Delphi, and Access offered easier Windows development. Client-server architecture replaced file-based databases. Comment below, what's the oldest legacy system you've maintained? ActionScript. Flash's programming language. Interactive websites, browser games, video players. The technical evolution, ActionScript 3 was complete rewrite. True classes, packages, namespaces. Compiled to AVM2 bytecode. JIT compilation made it fast. Display list managed graphics. Vector graphics were first class. Flash players sandbox isolated content. Timeline animation integrated with code. The peak, mid-2000s to early 2010s. Millions of Flash developers. YouTube's first player was ActionScript. The execution, Steve Jobs killed it. No Flash on iPhone. Security vulnerabilities everywhere. HTML5 video replaced Flash players. Adobe announced end of life in 2017. Browsers removed Flash support in 2020. Logo. The Turtle graphics language. Every 80s kid remembers that triangle. Turtle had position and heading. Forward moved. Right turned. Repeat loops iterated. TO defined procedures with parameters. Recursion was built in. Lists were main data structure. No types. Everything was words or lists. Visual feedback was immediate. The teaching years, 1970s through early 90s. Elementary schools worldwide. Apple II labs full of kids programming turtles. The obsolescence. Visual programming languages like Scratch offered better engagement. Schools wanted students learning real languages. Logo became seen as a toy. This is your history lesson. These languages shaped everything you use today. They solved real problems with real engineering. And they all faded away. Your move. Which language surprised you? Drop a comment. Subscribe for more tech history. Share this with a developer who thinks JavaScript is old. Because in tech, today's hot framework is tomorrow's forgotten language.